Hello everyone, welcome to Sharmit. In this session, we are going to talk about another very important topic related to Angular lazy loading concept, where we will be seeing all those situations, all those conditions where we are not supposed to utilize the lazy loading concept. If you remember, in our last session we talked about those scenarios, those situations where we are supposed to utilize the lazy loading, but here we will talk about those conditions where we are not supposed to utilize lazy loading concepts. And why it is important? Because if you don't know like what are the things that will work negatively on your performance, then you might have used it, right? So that is why like what we will do, we will firstly, before directly moving into the examples, we will figure out what are the conditions where we should not use lazy loading concept. Okay. So we will go in the same way, like firstly I'll explain you the requirement, the pointers, I'll explain you the pointers, and then in the next sessions we will start with the practical thing. But before we proceed further with the session, I would like to recommend you to please go and check out the previously released sessions first, because they all are in proper sequence and sync. So if you follow them sequentially, then it would be much more easier for you to understand the ongoing topic, because for time being we are just mainly focusing on the pointers that we should keep in mind before applying the lazy loading concept. Okay. And for the sequential content, you can refer the Sharmit digital course book, which is freely available in the description box. So from there you can take a reference and you can implement the same. So there you will find more than 3000 plus resources available in both Hindi as well as English language. Okay. All right. So now let's go one by one and see what we have written over here. So first heading shows the main topic, that is Angular 19 goes by Sharmit. Then we have secondary heading which shows when not to use lazy loading and the situation we should avoid these situations. Okay. So first point says do not lazy load the home page. Why? Because suppose if someone is visiting your application or your website, and when they click or put the URL and try to load your application, and if home page is getting delayed, then there is no worth of it, right? So that is why we always consider that we should not load the home page, because home page is something that need instantly, right? It is something that should be come up first on the application. So if you have applied the lazy loading to that home page, then how it will work? It will not come in a timely manner, right? Therefore we can say that home page must open instantly. Okay. Second thing here mentioned is as lazy loading home breaks the user experience. Of course, like if your user will not see the home page immediately, it will break the user experience. That is the reason we say that home page must open instantly and it should not be lazy loaded. Here, then we have second point. Second point says do not lazy load very small components. What it means? So suppose because we are working with an application, so there are multiple components. Some components are very heavy and complex, some components are very small and simple. So it is always preferred to go with the complex one first, because if you want to apply lazy loading thing, apply it to the complex or larger components, not to the smaller one. Why? Because if the component is tiny, if a component is small, then lazy loading can create multiple issues like extra network call. So if lazy loaded applied to the small component, it will need extra network call, extra delay. Yes, if there are components which are small and unnecessary, if you have applied the lazy loaded concept, then it will cause an extra delay. Other than that, there is no other performance benefit, right? So this thing should also be considered, that if you are applying the lazy loading concept to a small component or simple component, then there is no benefit as such for the performance as well. Fine. Then we have you can see the example. Suppose if a simple header or a small card component is there, so in that case we should not use the lazy loading concept. Okay. Fine. Now we will talk about the third point, which is when the feature is required immediately at the app start. Okay, so you have implemented the application. Now you know that when the users open the app at the startup time, these are the features that should run immediately. These features should not wait extra. So in those situations, we will avoid applying lazy loaded concept. Why? Because if you applied lazy loading to those features, then it will load only user wants it, right? And due to which it will cause issues, it will cause performance issues. Okay, so that is why it is always recommended to not use lazy loading to the features which required immediately at the app started. Okay, like login page. So if you are working on an application and if you know that login page is something that every user should get on the very first at the time of app startup, right? So therefore you can simply skip this login page for lazy loading. Second thing is app shell or layout. Yes, for app shell and layout we should not use. Main dashboard for sign in user. So if you know that users are signed in and they will see the dashboard, so in that case you can simply avoid using the lazy loading concept. Okay, fine. Now we have next, which is when components share the important services. We all know the concept of services, right? So if you think your components are going to share the important services, then do not lazy load the application. Okay, because if a lazy loaded component needs a global shared services, then it may create duplicate services instances. Better to eagerly load shared common component. So overall you can say that those components which are common or which are shared, you know that there are other component there are other component which are going to use these kind of shared common component. So in that case we can simply avoid using the lazy loading concept for those component. Okay, then we have next thing, that when components shared important services, this thing we already discussed, right? So in those situations what we will do, we will simply consider to go with a eagerly load shared or common components. Eagerly load, so we discussed the thing difference, right? What is eager loading and what is lazy loading. So in that case you can simply avoid using the lazy loading concept. Fine. Then we have fifth point, when there are too many lazy loaded chunks. So if you think there are so many application lazy loaded chunks in your application, then in that case you should avoid using it. Okay, so when there are too many lazy loaded chunks, because overdoing the lazy loading creates too many issues, like it will create the need of too many network requests, performance issues, poor caching, right? So these are the all issues which should occur if you are using the lazy loading concept too much. Okay, so make sure that there should not be too many lazy loading chunks in your application. Okay, fine. And that is why we are saying that balance is important. So make sure that balance is important. If it is really needed, apply that concept. If it is not needed, just simply skip that. That's it. Okay, fine. Now the next thing is sixth point. In sixth point we have mentioned then when SEU require content on first load. Yes, so we know that SEU concept, right? So if you think SEO need these kind of information at the page startup, so for those information we will not apply the lazy loading, because if a page content must appear instantly for SEO purpose, then we should avoid lazy loading for sure. For example, if there is a blog landing page in SSR application, so make sure that yes, we are not applying any lazy loading concept to that particular thing. Okay, last point is when user flow depends on its speed. So if you think your user flow will depends on speed, so in that case just simply avoid using it. Why? Because if the user must switch frequently or quickly between pages, then loading time for lazy chunk creates a delay. So always make sure that you will not do this. Okay, for example, POS system, finance app and chat applications. Suppose if you are working with a finance application and if it is taking too much time, then numbers will get changed, right? If you are working with a share market or a banking application, so if the number is not reflecting on the real time, it might cause issues and a huge loss as well. Okay, so that is why we will simply avoid using those kind of situation when user flow depends on the speed. Okay, so I hope this session is clear to all of you. In the next session we will discuss few more things. So thank you for watching Tech Sharmit.